Okay. Oh yeah, okay. Ah, Professor Grouper. It's a good likeness, yes. Ah. The U.S. government has spent tens and hundreds of millions of dollars in a process that's hypothetical. It's called terraforming Mars. Our tax dollars, millions of dollars, are going to this stupidity of making Mars Earth-like. And, well, number one, it won't work because Mars is only a sixth of the mass of the Earth, and it can't hold an atmosphere. It used to have an atmosphere, but it's pretty much lost it. But the other idea is that it's real easy to make Earth like Mars. The term I'm coining is called Marsification, and it's real easy. Just take the ocean's fish out, and there goes 70% of our oxygen production and 70% of our carbon sink, dead. The damage is already done. Massive plankton die off for lack of magic elixir. Started in 1985, and the oceans are rapidly running out of oxygen. This is the crux of this whole talk that you're going to see. It's not really a talk so much as a presentation. There's music, there's poetry. The end of the world is not fun, and to make it palatable, we throw music and poetry in. And one thing that has to be mentioned is that the governments of the world are subsidizing this global suicide by ocean fishing. The name of the talk is The Magic Elixir of Life. There can be no life on Earth once the plankton die off totally, because they supply the fish with their oxygen. And the fish are running out of oxygen a whole lot quicker than we are. And let's stay focused on corporate power. Corporate power is 2 million steel-hulled fishing boats. Imagine 20 miles of a fishing cable with thousands of hooks. And they're out there by the thousands of boats out there with these long liners. And they get turtles, sea turtles, they get seabirds. They're stripping the last of the ocean's fish. Trawlers, in case you don't know, trawlers have a big iron bar, and they drag it along the bottom of the ocean with a net attached to it so that everything goes into this net. And it clear cuts all the plant life, and if there's a big rock in the way, they send divers down to blow it up. That's corporate power. There's a couple analogies to the predicament that we're in. We don't have a whole lot of time. I'm going to give us maybe 4 months. This is a process, a collapse, and you can't put a date to it scientifically. The ancients have given us a date, and it just so happens that the oceans are collapsing. The fish are running out of air. We need to have full ocean recovery. This is a matter of life on Earth. I'm afraid that the human capacity for exterminating things is going to play a final role here. The oxygen of the Earth didn't depend on the buffalo. 15 billion passenger pigeons are totally extinct. But our oxygen supply didn't depend on passenger pigeons. The saber-toothed tiger, while we were evolving as tropical fruit-eating beach monkeys, the northern parts of 15-foot saber-toothed tigers for millions of years. 6-foot wolves called dire wolves. We have exterminated these critters. 10,500 BC to 10,000 BC, it was a culture trait across the entire northern hemisphere that if you wanted to get married, if you wanted to be a man, you had to have a saber tooth around your neck, a 10-inch tooth. Then you could get married. Well, believe me, the saber-toothed tigers were gone in no time. And humanity seems to be subsidizing the death of the earth. Government subsidies. Spain is a real aggressive subsidizer of a vicious fishing industry. The U.S. has regulations that implemented have helped a few species recover. And they've shown, the U.S. has shown that the recovery is possible. The President and Laura Bush, when they stepped out of office, they created the biggest marine preserve with no fishing in the world. Australia just made a new marine preserve where no fishing is allowed. Things are looking pretty good. Whole Foods has, and Safeway have both banned the sale of all fish from trawling, and just a whole lot of species. But that's not enough. I mean, it shows that that they want to do good, but we have to totally ban all ocean fishing. Subsidies by the government, the Chinese take more than everybody else. The Chinese government is the fishing industry. So if the Chinese government is shown that this is suicide by ocean fishing ongoing right now and not much time left, it ends the next day. That's the kind of government they have. They can end ocean fishing immediately. A couple analogies. We're all on this bus, call it the Ark. We've left the road. The damage is done. Massive plankton die-off starting in 1985 was unreported. It didn't get into the newspapers. It didn't get into the public consciousness. Maybe 1% of the scientists are aware of this, but the ones who are aware are tearing their hair out. They're ocean chemistry scientists. So the bus has left the road. The damage is done. We're bouncing along. 90% of this species of seabirds is gone. 90% of the sharks are gone. You know, it's like 90% of the ocean fish, 90% of the plankton. And it's the ability to recover in time. If the oceans were left alone, maybe in 100 years, the full oxygen production, carbon sink function would be restored. Simple solutions have to keep us optimistic. Like in India, they just had a blackout with 680 million people. What if India had white roofs? That blackout wouldn't have happened. We could save half the energy in Texas here just by painting our roofs white, you know, and we can save the world by leaving the oceans alone. So I'm afraid that humanity is going to treat the ocean's fish like the saber-toothed tiger and the dire 6-foot wolves. But things are changing. The Pope could say, Catholics, no fish on Friday. Veggie burgers, something, but no fish on Friday. Judaism and Islam are still waiting for a savior. They don't have much time, and they better find the savior real soon. And I want to say that you the savior. You save the tuna too. Okay, full ocean recovery. So, The Audubon Society has a list of ocean fish that you shouldn't eat. Especially farmed fish, because they'll grind up ocean fish, grind up Professor Grouper here, and feed them to some fish in a pen. And the ratio is like 3 to 5 pounds of ocean fish to get you 1 pound of farmed fish. That's insane. So I'm going to read something. I wrote it a couple of years ago. The terms global warming and climate change are woefully inadequate and sadly misleading. The ongoing failure of our Earth's major carbon sink, plus its primary source of oxygen production, is due to overfishing the oceans and the subsequent massive plankton die-off over thousands of square miles of ocean starting 1985. Since 1950, corporate power and mindless greed have used sonar systems to locate and destroy 90% of the ocean's schools of fish, depriving marine plant life of the rich nutrients in the fecal plumes of the trillions of fish in millions of schools. These vast oceanic forests of unicellular photosynthetic plant life were the daily source of 70% of our oxygen on Earth, while taking in through solution 70% of the atmospheric carbon gases. Calling the ongoing collapse of our atmosphere, our primary life support system, climate change is like calling 2 collapsed lungs a breathing problem. Whether it's warming as it collapses or not is inconsequential if the cause of the ongoing collapse is not addressed soon. Well, thank goodness we are primates and we don't need to eat fish. It's kind of hard to, well, it's not that hard to replicate the taste of fish using seaweed and spices. Kitty doesn't want to run out of atmosphere. You look in your cat food, make sure that there's no ocean fish. The talk that we presented that you're about to see, the videographer is Alan Pogue, and we thank Alan. He's the Texas Center for Documentary Photography. I want to thank Motorblade, that's Fritz Blau, for donating postering service over the years of my campaign for ocean fish. The World Poet, Tom the World Poet, and Mr. Twitch. Twitch is an artist, and he did this incredible drawing. So we have Twitch, Alan and Tom and Fritz, and I'm Bob. And another analogy, the bus, having left the road, is approaching the cliff. And the cliff is the point of no return, where the ocean fish are so reduced that they cannot recover the oxygen garden in time before anaerobic bacteria take over and hydrogen sulfide suffuses the ocean and the atmosphere, and the sky turns green. Oxygen is the source of our blue sky. The last schools of tuna are being followed with sonar by satellites. They're 90% gone. The less and less they are of them, the more they're worth. A fish just sold for $400,000 on the Japanese fish market in Tokyo. I thought $64,000 was a lot for one fish, but the less and less they are, the more and more they go after them. And all the fish are trapped in the top half mile, the photic layer of the oceans, where the plant life is. And so with sonar, they can find all of them and wipe all of them out, and the last one would be on an internet auction among Chinese billionaires, Russian billionaires, American billionaires, and maybe sell for $50 million. And then, no, let's be positive. We're going to save this planet. We are going to let the oceans recover. So this is a talk given at Brave New Books in Austin, Texas on August 10th. And I hope you enjoy it. And turn the heat up. I mean, if you're doing anything environmental, double your efforts. We've got 5 months, 4 months, whatever it is. Beyond that point, there's no recovery. 62 years of stripping the oceans. Strip mining, yeah. Sonar turned ocean fishing into a form of strip mining. And it used to be an honorable profession whereby but if you ask any of the world's the little wooden boat, the fishing cultures all over the world, for 20 years their catches have been reduced by 90%. Their youngsters can't fish. They have to go to the big city and find jobs. The more primitive fishermen, the fishing cultures of the world have been wiped out by corporate power and greed. And the enemy is ignorance, obviously. This is a primary fact that got overlooked. And what else? Okay, this would be on the end. But in the talk, I didn't emphasize the fact that the carbon sink is dead. The massive plankton die-off, the blue-green algae, the marine blue-green algae, they're gone for lack of magic elixir, the fish poop, the magic elixir of life. And so the carbon sink gone, and the oxygen production gone. The atmosphere shrinking, a smaller atmosphere lets in more UVs, but the heat from the carbon that's building up around the center of the Earth, this 10 million square mile cloud of carbon called, some people are calling it the Asia brown haze, but I like to call it cloud number 1. There's another eddy off of West Africa and another eddy off of Central America. They're drying up the tropics for a couple decades now, but a new weather pattern whereby the continental interiors dry up, and that's what we're coming into. We're seeing this year, and world drought conditions from the rainout of the global monsoon, which is now the Asia brown haze, 2 miles thick, 10 million square miles. That's about it. Hey, that's a good way to start a talk off.
That's a filler word, famous filler word.
My first words on this talk are, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. And this is Bill Oliver. Bill's going to be singing some songs while we do this Power Pants presentation. I wore my Power Pants.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the first song that we're going to hear is called Food Chain.
Breakfast meal for a mouse, the grass outside its house. All morning it might munch, then a snake eats it for lunch. Before the snake gets thinner, a hawk eats it for dinner. It's another day in a natural food chain. Big fish eat the little fish, story we know well. Little fish eat crustaceans, drifting in their shells. Crustaceans live on plankton, drifting in the sea. Plankton live on minerals and this food chain is complete.
Bob. Yeah. Minerals. The plankton live on minerals. There's another word. It's called fish poop. Fish poop. Fish. Don't say that. We are Puritan culture here, and we're not going to use that word excrement or the S word. We're going to call it the magic elixir of life. 90% of what the plankton live on, minerals, is fish poop. And the other 10% is upwellings from the deep ocean, the benthic upwellings. What the rivers deliver to the oceans, the minerals, the nutrients. That's what the plankton live on. 10% of what they live on is what the rivers, what washes off the shore, and the benthic upwellings. The other 90% of the minerals that the plankton live on is fish poop. No, fish poop.
Elixir.
Magic elixir of life. All life, as we know it, depends on the magic elixir of life. Millions of tons every day. It's a daily thing. And the plankton put out 70% of our oxygen and take in 70% of the carbon. So if there's no magic elixir in the oceans, then the plankton have trouble, and then we have trouble. Big trouble. 22 years ago, I woke up and I was working with an environmental group that deals with the oceans. And I was taking in all this information, and I woke up in the morning and I said, oh, elixir, we're going to run out of oxygen. And so for 22 years, I've been studying and thinking real hard. Well, 22 years ago, I made this bumper sticker. It says, no schools of fish equals no fish poop elixir. And it equals massive plankton die-off equals no oxygen. So 22 years ago, this was on bumpers. And people going down the interstate would read it, and they'd go, honk, and they'd go like this, I'm thinking. And we all need to be thinking real hard about this. For 22 years ago, I was studying herbal medicine. I had dozens and dozens, maybe 60 some books on herbal medicine. And all the natural medicines come from nature, from the biosphere. And if you're concerned about nature and medicines, then you better protect the planet. All doctors should be concerned right now. And so 22 years ago, I started accumulating a bunch of resources. And I didn't really think about there being an ending. But now it's caught up. The oceans are in extremely deep trouble. But the first book was by David Rains Wallace called The Klamath Knot. He's a naturalist. And the Klamath Knot talks about the origin of the conifers. And it's such a beautiful book, The Klamath Knot, that it really turned me on wide open to nature. Natural processes. Farley Mowat. This was the second book, Sea of Slaughter, an eye-opening book. Farley Mowat is a Canadian writer. And then Rachel Carson. She was a marine biologist, Rachel Carson. She wrote The Sea Around Us. She wrote Under a Sea Wind, and The Edge of the Sea. And I read these as a little boy. And then she wrote Silent Spring, 1961, and launched the environmental movement. But she was a marine biologist to begin with. A story about Rachel Carson while she was working on her PhD here in Austin, and reports of chlordane showing up in the termite treatment showing up in the fish of Town Lake. And she got so aggrieved that she started writing Silent Spring here in Austin, finished it along with her degree in Florida. I highly recommend her trilogy on the oceans. And Bill McKibben's book, The End of Nature, just blew us all away. Stephen Schneider, The Next 100 Years. Shaping the Fate of the Planet and the Living Earth. He talks about feedback loops, and he explains feedback loops real well. This book here, Seasick, by Alana Mitchell, talks about plankton and how we all depend on plankton for 70% of our oxygen and to take in all that carbon. Another great book is Field Notes from a Catastrophe, Elizabeth Colbert. And then there's the atmospheric scientist, his name James Hansen. Storms of my grandchildren. And he's got a quote that I really like. All models are wrong, but some are useful. And that's a good thing. So we have the song, the food chain song, the plankton live on fish poop. No, the plankton live on minerals and the circle is complete. Well, I'm not going to be using these books anymore. There's not much time left for the oceans to support life on Earth. So I'm going to donate them to Brave New Books here. And they might end up in the hands of a student from India and a student from China in America. And I'm thinking they can still do some good. So I'm going to send them out there like they were my little children. And Bill, his music, just, it's so organic, and it just goes with what I need to say here. There was a quote here. I just saw it an hour ago. But anyway, okay, food chain. Every September 20th, there's this huge storm. It's an upper level storm at the South Pole. The Earth has a wobble, a 23-degree wobble. And so the electromagnetic buildup discharges every September 20th. It's a 10-day storm, upper level, 140 degrees, below zero winds, 140 miles an hour. It's called the polar vortex. And it's upper level. Get enough halon gases in the atmosphere, chlorine, bromine, fluorine, and they decay your ozone layer. Your ozone layer gets thinner and thinner when there's a solar flare going on. It's good to have a thick ozone layer. But it got so thin that the annual vortex storm finally busted a hole in it, shoved it aside. And so the hole was caused by this storm called the vortex, but they never really explained the vortex. Some things are hidden for some reason. Some things are hidden, some things are unknown, and then we'll get into the meat of the issue, the magic elixir of life. It's 1998. A dirty bug lab, mob bug lab in Queens, New York. And they breed bugs with diseases for researchers. And the Navy since 1952 was researching West Nile virus, and this old dirty bug lab in the Queens had a case of 5,000 mosquitoes heavily infected with West Nile virus, and they dropped them. Bam, out they go. The livery's stable. 2 days later, all their horses are dead. The next year, it's in the bird flyway, the East Coast bird flyway. The next year, it's in our central bird flyway, and we get West Nile virus. And yeah, it's still around. The mosquitoes here in Austin are still infected with West Nile virus. And they go, well, we don't know where it came from. It must have got off a plane in New York City. But that's not, it's being hidden. And let's make a little levity here about this mosquitoes.
We're getting eaten by mosquitoes. We are just like mosquito Fritos. They like to nibble on our noses. They do not care about our closes because their mouths can go right through them. Sometimes they even stop and chew them. We're getting eaten by mosquitoes. Mosquito party, ole! When they nibble on your knuckle, it will not make you want to chuckle. And when they bite you on your ankle, it will not make you very thankful. When they feast upon your forearms, they're going to leave you with some sore arms. You're going to wish you had 2 more arms. Mosquito party, obey everybody. We're getting eaten by mosquitoes. We're just like mosquito fritos. We are just like mosquito fritos. I can nibble on your nose. They like to nibble on your noses. They do not care about your. They do not care about your clothes. It's because their mouths can go right through. Because their mouths can go right through them. Sometimes they even stop and chew them. We're getting eaten by mosquitoes. Mosquito party, ole! Yeah. Everybody buzz and swat. Yeah. Beautiful. There's one on your forehead. Yeah. There's one on your neighbor's forehead. Whoa. Woo. All the way from east to west Nile. Now they're here in East Nile. Whoa. And if you go out forest hiking, it will be greatly to their liking. And if you go down to the beach now, they'll always be within your reach now. If you're a loser or a winner, to a mosquito you're just dinner. And they're not getting any thinner. Mosquito party, ole! Let Daryl Cherry hear you. Getting eaten by mosquitoes. We are just like mosquito fritos. They like to nibble on our noses. They do not care about our clothes because their mouths can go right through them. Sometimes they even stop and chew them. We're getting eaten by mosquitoes. Mosquito party, ole! Mosquito party, ole! Mosquito party, ole! There's 3 more! Song by Daryl Turner, California.
Oh, that's Daryl's, huh? I thought you made that up.
Sorry, Daryl.
He's got tons of great songs, though. We're going to hear another one real shortly.
Is this
We're
the
talking.
meat? Is this the meat?
The beat?
The meat,
Oh, no, not the meat yet.
not the meat.
No, West Nile virus. We're talking about things that are hidden. Hidden. Like the World Trade Center when it came down. You ended up with 4 inches around the area of powdered glass and powdered concrete. Things falling down made out of glass and concrete break into pieces. They don't turn into powder. Anybody with any military, well, not anybody with any military experience, but a lot of people who've handled high explosives know, thanks to this bookstore, for one, has been pushing this idea about this atrocity being blamed on the wrong people. World Trade Center. The idea of thermal devices being in each tower. No uranium, no plutonium, just hydrogen. There's a book, and it's horrifying. But Fukushima, it is being hidden. It's the disaster in Fukushima. Number one, it was GE's fault for putting those reactors on that subduction fault. If the Japanese mob had asked GE to put 10 reactors around Mount Fuji, would they have done it? Yes, they would have. In what is happening with 20 cores being exposed for the last 2 years, we're getting so much radiation from Japan. It's in the jet stream. And they're pouring water on these spent fuel rod cores. There may be 20 some cores. And it's much worse than Chernobyl, and it's ongoing. It's not over. And the ultimate irony is that when the earthquake happened, President Obama was down in Chile selling 5 nuclear reactors to Chile when the earthquake went off. And he's smart enough that I'm sure that the irony didn't escape him, much less the radiation escape his children. And nothing I'm going to say about the mountain of gold and silver under Kosovo that the Romans lost division after division trying to hold on to. Electrum, that's the amalgam of silver and gold. And it's clean, it's not radioactive. I'm not going to say anything about Kosovo, but Austin, the Colorado River, this is hidden. I'll tell you what, this is a private nuclear waste dump. It's owned by Jeb and George's biggest fundraiser. It's called Waste Control Specialists, and it's at the top of our Colorado River. It's over 3 aquifers, not 1, not 2, 3. It's hard to find a place in Texas where you can irradiate 3 aquifers. And if we get our act together, we can get them to move it because it's so blatantly misplaced. So 22 years ago, I was studying herbal medicine, and I got rid of my books. I took them to my 60 herb books. I took them to a dealer, and he got rid of them real quick. And I started focusing on the environment. I didn't want the books, the herbal medicine, to distract me from what I was working on. The site straddles the state line, and the state line was put on top of a north-south escarpment back in 1850. I think it was Captain Emery was surveying for the United States government to stop Texas's claim to New Mexico. He needed to find a border. Well, here was this north-south trending escarpment fault called the Mescalero. It's a major active earthquake fault. 3 aquifers in a recharge zone, and it's been approved for the nuclear waste of America, all 36 states, and it's private, so you won't hear anything about it. And it's 8-story deep holes in the ground with plastic lining. They visualize 300 8-story deep pits with plastic lining. Holes in the ground. That's one of my favorite songs. Holes. Oh, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Oh, yeah.
Hold on.
Hey, what's the room?
Hold on.
16%.
Harlan, would you open the window? We could get some fresh radiation in here.
They got concrete walls that are 4 feet thick, set for the poles, set for the holes, so if anything leaks, it won't leak very quick. Set through the poles, set through the holes. He got a concrete contract, we're supposed to believe, but it's full of holes. It's full of holes, there ain't nothing shaky, nothing up their sleeves. Set for the poles, set for the holes. He got holes in the walls where there shouldn't be holes. He got holes in the laws where there ought to be laws. They got a whole lot of plans for the future ahead. If they think I believe them, they got holes in their heads. Holes in their heads. Holes, 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 holes. Now hold. Well, let's take another look at this whole situation. When the fuel's dug up, it leaves holes in the ground, holes in the ground, holes in the ground, and uranium tailings scattered around, scattered around, scattered around. And when it's done its work, it goes back in a hole, back in a hole, back in a hole. And when the waste goes off, ain't nobody knows, nobody knows, nobody knows, nobody knows what we can control. Nobody knows what the future will hold. Nobody knows, and it worries my soul. The sun's so tall, it should be so full of holes, so full of holes, so full of holes. Holes, 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 holes.
Yeah. Well, I think we're ready for the meat of the issue. Let me see here. I found this globe here. It doesn't have an Arctic ice cap. It's all ocean. 6 million square miles of ocean. Amazing. Where'd the ice cap go? Okay. Every September 20th. Okay, we've got that. Now, jet stream. Things that are not known. Things that are unknown. What we're talking about tonight is cutting edge of science. 1938, they discovered the jet stream. Scientists put a bunch of instruments on a balloon and they sent it up, and 8 to 10 miles above our heads, they discovered 200-mile-an-hour winds. Just took off the balloon. They didn't know about it until then. There are a lot of unknowns, and part of the problem is that scientists are specialized, so that your oceanographer doesn't necessarily know what's going on in the upper atmosphere. Britain has socialized science so that, what was his name? Joe Farnham, in his Doppler spectrometer down on Haley Bay in Antarctica, and he notices, oh, there's a hole in the ozone layer, and he goes back and reports it. Now, the U.S. had already discovered it with their satellites, but they weren't going to tell anybody. They were not going to tell anybody. Another thing is the glaciation cycle theory. There, you're going to hear that the glaciers are caused by, the glaciation cycles are caused by these wobbles, fluctuations in orbit, called the Milankovitch cycle. And if that's not true, maybe affect 2% of the, oh good, that's out of, if those Milankovitch cycles were true cause of glaciation, then the 4 glacier cycles in the last 2 million years and then none for 100 million years, no. That's not the cause, obviously, because for 100 million years there was no glaciation cycles. And what it is the plate tectonics, which was coined in 1903 by Wegener. And he said the plates were moving, and this plate moves, and they ended up with this bowl. This bowl of 4,000 feet deep, cold water, 33, 34 degrees. It's warming. And so the only way for this cold water to get out from the Arctic Ocean is around Greenland, the Labrador Current on the bottom. And occasionally you'll have water spilling cold water into the Pacific, be through the Bering Strait. Now picture 2 miles of ice over Chicago. And the sea level is so tied up in ice that it goes down 500 feet. And that makes a dam out of the Bering Strait. And the cold water cannot spill into the Pacific. So the Pacific warms up a little bit. It doesn't take much. 2 degrees, 3 degrees at the most is all it takes. And the warmer weather coming off the Pacific starts your ice melting. And then the sea level goes back up, and then cold water starts spilling in. And it's just a matter of geomorphology. The continents, how they shape up and have this cold bowl of water on top. So that's out of the way here. Any questions? There was a geomorphology course I took in North Texas, but it has to be a cycle theory because you can't prove it. There's no laboratory big enough to prove it. So it will be always a theory, the same as evolution. John Kennedy, when he first became president, he had a quote, and I don't have it with me. It's in this packet. And everybody gets a packet of information. This is Mr. Plankton from SpongeBob, and he's got a button on. 22 years ago, I had 100 buttons made that said, "Ask me about massive plankton die-off." I still have one, thanks to...
I have one.
You got one too, good. Well, the quote from John Kennedy, it was his first speech to Congress. "Knowledge of the oceans is more than a matter of curiosity. Our very survival may hinge upon it." So that was from John Kennedy's first presidential speech, March 1961, to Congress. Magic elixir of life. 22% of the oxygen we're breathing right now came from blue-green algae. Nowadays, I think they want us to call that blue-green algae cyanobacteria, but I can't do that. It's a photosynthetic, one-celled, the most primitive giver of oxygen that we have. 22% came from blue-green algae. Phytoplankton, 33%. And then the other 15% of the 70% of our oxygen from the oceans comes from other photosynthetic marine plant species, unicellular. And not only is 70% of the oxygen, but 70% of the carbon sink. And here's all this plant life, the forest of the sea. The soil for the forest of the sea is the magic elixir. The fish food, the fertilizer for the oxygen garden, the magic elixir of life. We got to have millions of tons every day in the oceans, or else. And we're getting too damn close to the or else. And so off they go to do some good. And believe me, for the next 5 months, I will also be continuing working. I've been sending these for years. My brother John and my brother Alan have helped here a lot. We've sent these to Congress people, leagues of women voters, all the UN delegations, all the embassies in Washington, all the environmental groups, all the government agencies, and get a lot of responses from women's groups. The Leagues of Women Voters, the 200 convents, I got some nice replies. Humans have been fishing for 30,000 years. We started out on logs and rafts. I think I hear a fish song coming. The biggest poopers in the ocean, of course, was whales. Industrial whaling started this whole collapse off. A whale will, after coffee in the morning, a couple 100 pounds of fertilizer for the oxygen garden. And the rainforests, they only occupy 5% of the Earth's surface, but they make 20% of the oxygen. They have the most diversity, they take in the carbon. And that's only on 5% of the Earth's surface. The Earth is 70% ocean and puts out 70% of the oxygen, but here's the rainforest, only 5% of the Earth's surface, pumping out 20% of our oxygen. But right now, they're so stressed. And the reason they're stressed is the next. We need a song. We gotta have a song. A whale song. Yes. Here's a whale song.
A whale of a song.
This is a good one here.
Sung by Paul Kaplan using a traditional melody.
Paul Kaplan?
Paul Kaplan. They sing this on the Sloop Clearwater Hudson River.
Oh, yeah.
Call me the whale, for that's what I am, and what I aim to be. You may call yourselves the kings of the land, but I reign over the sea, brave boys. I reign over the sea. Well, you came after me with your matchstick boats and your harpoons poised for the kill. When I looked you in the eye, I never saw you cry, but I know I gave you a chill, brave boys. I know I gave you a chill. And I never learned a lesson, and
You never learned your lesson.
But you never learned your lesson, and more you came, till I ran out of places to hide. When your boats got so big, I could not bring you down. I knew that you had turned the tide, brave boys. I knew that you had turned the tide. And now you hunt me down with your factory ships. You never even touch me with your hands. In the mornings I am playing with my babies in the waves. In the afternoons I'm packed into your cans, brave boys. In the afternoons I've packed into your cans. And you've gotten so efficient with your implements of death that now I'm barely alive. But if you treat each other the way you've treated me, I think I'm going to survive, brave boys. I think I'm going to survive. Call me the whale, for that's what I am, and what I aim to be. You may call yourselves the kings of the land, but I reign over the sea, brave boys. I reign over the sea.
Yeah. Oh, but you.
Paul Kaplan.
I've been in pirate radio for a couple decades, and his is one of my staples. I love to play his songs, every one of them. We've been fishing for 30,000 years. It's an honorable profession. But the schools, the millions of schools, the trillions of fish, we couldn't touch them hardly. I mean, we would fish off the edge of the school, and no problem whatsoever. Until sonar. Sonar systems doomed all life on Earth. 1950, Congress told the U.S. Navy, you've got a bunch of surplus sonar systems, and you need to sell them to the fishing industry. Well, the Navy did it. Russia had been given sonar systems, and as soon as World War II ended, they started just stripping the oceans. The Russians took twice as much fish out for decades as anybody else. And so the reason that the Congress, was looking at the Russians using something, they said, well, they're not going to leave any for us. It's one of the rules in corporate fishing, don't leave anything for the other company. The bottom line is take the whole school. And there goes our major carbon sink. And the good thing about China now, China taking the mantle from Russia, Russia would strip oceans fish, sell them to Japan. I don't know how Japan ended up with the small car franchise here in America, but if you wanted a small car back in 1970, you had to go to Japan. So Japan was getting all these American dollars and turning them over to the Russians for fish. And that went on for decades. The Chinese have taken over that mantle. And the good thing about the Chinese government is that if they decide that it's suicide by ocean fishing, then the next day the fleets come home. That could be a good thing. The Navy could tomorrow start escorting all the fishing fleets off the high seas. It's survival of all life on Earth. In 1988, the company Tyson bought the biggest U.S. fishing fleet. And then they say, well, this is a good thing. We're going to not throw away millions of tons of fish. We're going to grind up the bycatch and we're going to feed it to chickens. So chickens, especially layers, eggs, chickens, turkeys, they're all ocean fish, so to speak. And you look in your organic dog food over here at Wheatsville, and it's got ocean fish. And it's not enough just to quit eating ocean fish or boycotting ocean fish. It's everywhere. The poor things are ground up, dried. They call it high protein meal, high pro meal. Okay, so here's our carbon. This is the meat of the issue. This is a power pants presentation, but my power pants keep falling down. Okay, carbon sink. Oxygen supply cut off. Carbon sink dead. The ZIC. The zone of intertropical convergence. Cold air hugs the ground. So from the South Pole and the North Pole come these cold fronts, cool fronts in our summer. Siberian winds going over ice cap 15 feet thick. Good winter. And they meet around the middle of the Earth in a zone called the zone of intertropical convergence. And the 3-mile thick ice cap on the South Pole, 3 miles thick. The cold's, let's say 60 degrees below zero, a warm day on a winter in Antarctica. And we're in summer, we're 100 degrees. But down there right now it's in the dead of winter. And the cold air falls off the 3-mile ice cap and just starts barreling across the Indian Ocean. The zone of intertropical convergence has some eddies in it where the winds meet and collect. And one of them is called the global monsoon. It's the greatest eddy that you ever want to see, the global monsoon. When I was in college, I took a course, high-level course in logic, and I liked logic so much that I took the same course over again under a different professor, just to get a different perspective. I did the same thing with anthropology. And I took the same course 3 times in anthropology. Each professor had a different, but one of them, the second one, opened my eyes big time, big time, big time. I mentioned the wobble that the Earth has, the 23-degree wobble. The wobble was given by a comet, an ice comet that sheared off 3.8 billion years ago, somehow ended up in our solar system, slamming into the molten Earth. Punched the core of the Earth out. It became the moon. The moon is nothing but the core of the Earth punched out by this ice comet. And it's heavy. It's dense. It's radioactive. It was the core. It's 15% uranium. It didn't get far. It affects us. The wobble gave us our seasons. The ice comet took away the heat, bulk of the heat. The moon solidified. It was totally molten. It was solidified. It's very heavy. Took away the radioactivity, took away the heat, gave us our oceans. I have to be real careful. We're in the meat of the issue. Now, I've been a vegetarian for 40 years. And I know that we don't need to eat fish. You know, I think the Pope should probably tell everybody, Catholics, no more fish on Friday. The world depends on it. I don't see it happening, but it might. Now, the good things are happening, and they're happening quick. And they need to happen to the magic elixir situation real bad. Okay, so we're doing the Zone of Intertropical Convergence, the ZIC. And, okay, over the Indian Ocean is the monsoon. This one professor who opened my eyes, he said, welcome to my class. For the next 2 months, we're going to be studying the global monsoon. And we don't know a whole lot about it. And if you decide to specialize in anthropology, then this would be a good thing to help humanity understand the global monsoon. But now there's a lot of understanding of the monsoon as it disappears, because the carbon sink is dead. 1985, massive plankton die-off started. It had been dying off. There's a 15-year lag between pulling out and subsequent plankton die-off. It's a matter of elixir in the solution. 15-year lag. Massive plankton die-off started in 1985. It was noticed by U.S. Navy pilots flying out of Diego Garcia. They noticed that the carbon was building up and the heat. And the carbon is building up. Not only are we putting out more carbon, but our carbon sink is dead. So it's really, I had to coin a phrase, carbon enshroudment. That's what we're going under. And carbon buildup. Let's see. So the monsoon is over the Indian Ocean. The other 2 clouds are stationary. The whole zone of intertropical convergence. A very special thing about the monsoon. Not only is its global effect, delivering moisture to Africa and Central America. Why is Central America having worsening droughts for 30 years? Why is Africa having worsening droughts since massive plankton die-off began? Well, there's your carbon sink. The carbon's building up. And the evaporation off the Indian Ocean used to be the monsoon, but it's now like 50% stolen by the carbon building up. The carbonic gases, the CO2, and it's in this huge 10 million square mile cloud. That's on the front here is a thermal image from a satellite in 2002. 10 million square mile cloud of carbon where the monsoon used to be. The monsoon is so late in India right now. It takes the evaporation that would have been monsoon, shoves it up to condensation level, and it drops it back in the ocean, depriving Africa of rain. Mild, warm carbonic acid. The oceans are becoming acidified rapidly, especially the Indian Ocean. They're warming up the benthos, the bottom temperature, the currents on the bottom. They used to be 33 degrees. They used to govern the climate of the planet. Now they're warming. They're 36 degrees. And the future of ice, the world without ice. It's a very good book, Henry Pollack. And saying the ice goes, and there's the albedo effect, where the solar radiation used to bounce back into space. Snowpack, ice caps. Just your less and less snow. The cryosphere shed a tear. You took a vacation one time. You went to Hawaii, and you met the state fish. This here's the state fish of Hawaii, y'all.
Everyone knows that.
And it's called the well, he knows it better than I do.
All Texans know this.
Texas?
Everyone say, humu humu. Nuku nuku.
Nuku nuku.
Apu Pig-nosed triggerfish.
Pig-nosed triggerfish.
Pre-vocabulary. Break out the hula skirts, somebody please. True story. I got off the plane in the Hawaiian rain, grabbed my goggles and fins to go snorkeling. Jumped into my suit, jumped into the bay, and the very first fish I saw that day was the humu humu nuku nuku apu ah. I saw. It wasn't too small, it wasn't too big. It looked a little bit like a cute little pig. It got pretty close till it got too shy. I think that it winked as it passed me by. The humu humu nuku apu ah. Everybody. Humu humu nuku apu ah. The very first fish I saw. Dancers, please. Notice the Hawaiian power pants. Every movement tells a story. Now the humu humu story is a Hawaiian lulu. I think somebody made a little Hawaiian boo-boo as you drift off to sleep in PJs in your mood, as you dance in your dreams, do a hula with humu. The humu apu. Sing it backwards. Humu the very first fish I saw. Deep voices. The very first fish I saw.
Yay! Right on, Bill Oliver. Bill does have some CDs here in this old classic LP.
LPs, 45s, cassettes.
He tried.
He got in front of the Austin City Council and saying Barton Springs Eternal. That's a great
Classic,
song.
classic.
I've got 2 copies of this.
All right.
Yeah, in case one
That's where they go.
gets borrowed or something.
Wow.
So where were we? We were talking about acidification, ocean warming, the sea level rises. I mean, Ray Charles can see that. The benthos is warming, and the carbon is building up in a 10 million square mile cloud. And there's another 6 million square mile cloud in an eddy off of West Africa, and another 3 million square mile cloud of carbon monoxide and dioxide off of Central America. Mexico is having the worst drought that anybody can imagine. Our neighbor is suffering this horrendous drought. And what is being robbed is the global monsoon. You don't talk about the monsoon, it's the global monsoon. And it dries up the tropics by raining out all the monsoon straight back into the ocean. It's all one process. The thing about the monsoon is that when the winter's happening right now in Antarctica, the winds are so strong that they push the clouds up over the Himalayas and they sit over China. So this monsoon rains go back ancient, thousands of years of agriculture. Every year, the monsoon clouds go up over China, and then they sit all of our winter over Indian Ocean, and now they're full of carbon dioxide, not water. And so it's called the Asia brown cloud, this huge 10 million square mile cloud of carbon. A lot of the carbon dioxide rains out to acidify the oceans, and a lot of the carbon monoxide doesn't. And it's real scary. And when it sits over China right now, this cloud is 30 million. It's a little more diffuse. It's from Baghdad to Beijing, a cloud of carbonic gases, and they pick up particulate, soot, over China. So that's why they call it the Asia brown cloud. You can actually see it from space. And so it's 160 degrees inside of it, and that's what's forcing all the evaporate up to condensation level and dumping it back in the oceans, depriving Africa of rain since 1985, since the massive plankton die-off started. Okay, the ice melt. The fact that the tropics, the rainforests of South America, Africa, Indonesia, 2,000 miles of... When I say that the rainforests used to make 20% of the oxygen, of our oxygen, that was the triple canopy ancient rainforest that humans have been chopping and burning at for 5,000 years. And right now, the lack of rain and the heat have stressed the rainforest so much. There's only 3% of the ancient rainforests of Indonesia, 3% maybe of Africa's, and a good 70% of the Amazon. But it's so stressed right now that they're actually a carbon emitter. There's burning going on. They're not putting out the oxygen that they used to, the rainforests themselves. So the atmosphere is shrinking from the top down. And I don't know how much as the Haber process came about in 1870. A lot of electricity, and you can take the air and split the nitrogen and the oxygen and use the oxygen for chemical processes, and take the nitrogen, make fertilizer, spread it on fields, wash it into the oceans, and there goes our atmosphere. Since 1970, the atmosphere shrunk 8 miles, the top 170 miles high, down 8. The oceans just aren't producing the oxygen. The 70%, and then the core, the crux. The oceans themselves have dissolved oxygen in them by the plant life, the phytoplankton, the blue-green algae, and that's what the fish breathe through their gills. And they're running out of air quicker than we are. Gravity keeps the oxygen on the surface of the planet that we breathe thickest. The gravity keeps it thickest for us while the top's coming down and oxygen starvation is sneaking up on us. The fish are running out of air quicker. And they are the producers of the magic elixir. We know a magic elixir, no life on Earth. That's bulk of the point that I'm talking about. You gotta have bulk magic elixir daily in the oceans. Okay, the comet slammed into the Earth. The oceans formed. Humans, okay, yeah, humans. So say 60 million years of primate evolution. That's us. And if you look between your fingers, you got these little webs that were forming, and we're furless. For the last 7 million years of our evolution, of our primate evolution, we were on the tropical beaches. We were tropical fruit-eating beach monkeys, not apes. Apes are kind of dour. Monkeys are more gregarious. And we started standing up in the oceans. And we lost our fur in the oceans. We lost our tail in the ocean. The tropical fruit-eating. The fruit-eating monkeys have bigger brains. The leaf-eating monkeys have smaller brains. But these leaf shredders remind us that we need to eat our greens every day. And what does that book say? I give you all the seed-bearing trees for your food. We can get along real well on grains, greens, beans, fruit, nuts, and all the veggies. That's for sure. And I want to say now one word. No, many words. What's our timing doing? Can we take a break? Or just keep rolling?
Keep rolling.
Okay, we'll keep rolling. I'm on a roll. I got the JFK quote.
Let's hear it for earthworms and fish.
Earthworms and fish. Earth fish first. Fish. Okay. Here we are burning up oxygen. We're combining it with carbon. We're combining it with sulfur. We have combustion. We have incineration. We have cremation. We have all this use, burning rainforests for agricultural use, for cattle, is contributing more than the cars. There's 850 million cars putting out all kinds of stuff. I just got a bumper sticker made today. Warning. This vehicle emits carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, hydrocarbons, oh no, benzene, aldehydes, especially harmful to children. I like this bumper sticker. I got 500 of them. Okay, we got just about the Haber process, atmosphere shrinking, and the fish are running out of air. Okay, so a lot of good things are happening right now. A lot of people are doing the best they can. And there's some things that are working against us, and one of them is fascism. Okay, here goes. Mr. Mussolini said, this is a quote, "Fascism should be more properly called corporatism, since it is the merger of state and corporate power." Now, this is where the government allows the corporations to do whatever they want. It helps them with the military to do whatever they want, and they don't have a soul. They're not people. They shouldn't be voting. They're going to take the last 10% of the ocean's fish. The industry says, oh, we're reducing the amount of ocean fish 1% a year since the introduction of sonar 1950. And they say, oh, we've taken out 60% of the ocean's fish. Greenpeace will say 70%. Some of them will say 80%. But the scientists, I believe, say that we got to 90% 2010, and we're working on the last 10% of the ocean's fish. That puts a bad light on the Elixir demand. And the fact that the oceans would be running out of the ability to support life on Earth at the same time that a 24,000-year-old calendar runs out, it could be a coincidence. It could be. Fascism allows the corporations to do whatever they want. Mountaintop removal for coal. They don't want miners. They don't want to go in and have miners dig coal out. They don't want to deal with unions. They just blow the top off the mountain and shove it into the creek. The people downstream don't like it at all. The people who have to drink the water, who would have made a good crop of ginseng, mountaintop removal is an abomination, but everything I'm reading here is an abomination. Deep ocean drilling, humans shouldn't be drilling 2 miles underwater. They can't even go down there and fix things. When that BP well blew, it released a huge cloud underwater. It went to the Sargasso Sea and killed it. It was in the tourism industry books that these millions of, each beach had millions of pounds of Sargasso Sea drilling in the oceans, deep ocean drilling. Leave the oil in the ground. Shit's toxic, excuse my French. Leave it in the ground. Mountaintop removal, deep ocean drilling, fracking. Fracking for gas was not done until horizontal. They drill down and then they drill horizontal. And they find their bed of rock that it's hard rock, shale, and it's got pockets of gas, so they drill down, do the horizontal drilling, put in high explosives, and blow the dickens out of that layer of rock. And then the gas comes up and people turn their tap on and they ignite it. There's pictures on the web of people igniting their taps all over the country, and it's just another result of a fascist government. Atomic power should not be. Every reactor in the world puts out radiation every day into the air and water. All the 100 reactors in the U.S. are now 30 years old, and they're all cancer cluster centers. They're all leukemia cluster centers. We've got Comanche Peak up by Dallas has 2 reactors. ST&P has 2 reactors. A friend of ours, Susan Solar, she did a study 5 years after these 2 things, abominations, were made, were fired up. And the cancer rates, let's see, women's breast cancer had gone up 135%. Pancreatic cancer in men had gone up 73%. 5 years later, in the 5 counties that surrounded these, anybody can go and get the statistics. Nuclear power. And the thing about nuclear power is it ties us to wastes that are deadly for generations to come, that will affect generations to come. And what else? Fracking, deep ocean drilling, genetic engineering of food, spraying poisons on our food, irradiating food. You get an organic bread made in Denver, let's say, and you want to sell it in Atlanta, and you put it on a freezer. Any food that gets on an airplane gets frozen and gets irradiated. It's a federal law. It must be irradiated. Fascist governments keep political prisoners. And we do have political prisoners. Leonard Peltier, Mumia Abu Jamal was a radio reporter on police corruption, official corruption, and he's been in prison in Pennsylvania. for 30 some years. And Alvaro Luna Hernandez is right here in Texas. He's been in for 15. The crime never even happened. FreeAlvaro.net. The Alberta tar sands, they want what, 300,000 acres? And they want to strip all the forests, pull out the tar sands, sell it to China. And then around the Alberta tar sands, there's a lot of uranium deposits, and this Indian gentleman named John Graham organized with the Indians to oppose the uranium milling and the uranium mining up there. And now he's sitting in a South Dakota prison for something he didn't do. This year he was given 50 years, extradited from Canada on the hearsay of one dubious witness that was recanted. And so the GrahamDefense.org, and this is what I'm going to be concentrating on after the world's ended, is political prisoners. I'm here because I have to be. I couldn't not do this. The incineration of toxics, deep well injection of toxics. In the late 30s, the fascists of the planet, they asked the American fascists, come on guys, get your stuff together and join us and we'll take over the world. And the American fascists said, no, the American people are too well armed and the forests are too vast. Freedom under the foot of tyranny flees to the forests. We have to do something about our forests first. These people are too well armed and we can't do it with these forests. So from 1970 to 2000, the US government cut clear cuts into the public forests. And if you look at aerial photographs of all these clear cuts, they're in an LZ pattern. If you have any experience in the military, they would have loved to have LZ pattern cut into the jungles of Vietnam when they got there. And that's a landing zone, LZ, and a road connecting to another landing zone, and another one. And they call them clear cuts, but it's an LZ pattern that has been cut now throughout the entire U.S. public forest system. And if fascism was to want to take over and try to control us, it would happen because they have these clear cuts. And who's opposing these clear cuts? Earth First, these wonderful, ragged youngsters trying, and not so young, trying to defend the forest system. And then they didn't get good publicity in being the cutting edge of American freedom fighters, if you catch my drift. Fascism. So now they're ready to take over, and the first thing they do is to get rid of the public education, because educated people don't like food irradiated, and they object to all this junk. So Hitler, he said, quote, "Universal education is the most corroding and disintegrating poison that liberalism has ever invented for its own destruction. We must allow the masses the blessings of illiteracy." Well, okay. Well, that should do it on fascism. You get the picture that the corporate power is blind to our needs, and 2 million steel-hulled ocean fishing boats out there, and we don't have much time. And we do have a lot of good things going with us. We have media. We have the internet. We can spread global awareness. If the people who live on the big, huge freezer factory ships, if those Chinese people who go ashore once every 5 years, if they knew about the need for Elixir and a future. There won't be any ocean fishing. There won't be any no squirrels, monkeys, birds, trees, nothing. They would possibly help us. We have the tools. The Navy could get the fishing fleets off the oceans next week. And the awareness is spreading, but we could spread it a whole lot quicker. And that should just about do it. There's one more song. Bill Oliver here is known on the internet as Mr. Habitat. Oh, well, I'm going to say one thing. I'm Bob Schrader, and I don't have a degree, but I've read all these books, and I've done a lot of deep thinking. And so I'm just giving this warning. But Mr. Habitat, he's got this song about all these different habitats. I mean,
Another one-word sing-along, folks. Habitat, 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 have to have a habitat, habitat, have to have habitat, habitat to carry on. The ocean is habitat, very special habitat, where the deepest water's at, where the biggest mammals at, where our future food is at, keeps the atmosphere intact. The ocean is habitat we depend on. Habitat, have to have habitat, habitat to carry on. The forest is habitat, very special habitat, where the tallest trees are at, where a bear could scratch her back. Keeps the ground from rolling back, renews the oxygen in fact. Forest is a habitat we depend on. Habitat, have to have a habitat, habitat, have to have habitat, habitat, have to have habitat, have to have habitat to carry on. The river is a habitat, very special habitat, where the freshest water's at for people fishing muskrats. And when people dump their trash, rivers take the biggest rap. The river is habitat we depend on. People are different than foxes and rabbits, affect the whole world with our bad habits. Better to love it while we still have it, or rat-a-tat-tat, more habitats gone. Habitat, have to have a habitat, habitat. 20 more times. Habitat, have to have a habitat, have to have habitat to carry on. Have to have a habitat to carry on.
gotta have them habitat. Thank you again. The music does soothe the savage beast. That's for sure. 100,000 years ago, women decided we're losing too many babies and children to sharks. To heck with this tropical fruit-eating beach monkey business. The women decided that we were going to move up the river and do gardening. And the first plant that humans ever cultivated was hemp. And the longest fiber in the plant kingdom is the hemp cell, fiber cell. And the paper, plastics, cloth. Betsy Ross's flag was hemp. The dollar bill. Do I have a dollar bill? They're 60% hemp. It's Chinese hemp. There was Canadian hemp, but they got a better deal with the Chinese hemp. And it lowers the blood pressure, so I consider it women's gifts to men. One of them. Hemp. Hemp, hooray. Yeah. And the government outlawed it in 1938, and our hemp is not made into rope, and it's a big... last notice. This book is a good book. It's called The End of the Line. It's about ocean fishing. It's the fish shit, stupid. It's gone. Well, I mean Elixir. Millions of tons of fish shit every day. Elixir. Missing, not there anymore. Millions of tons of rich liquid fertilizer excreted daily to grow our Earth's oxygen garden. A photosynthetic marine plant life. Must be like 7 million little plants in a liter of water. You can't see them. Overfishing oceans means that hydrogen sulfide will replace oxygen in our atmosphere and seawater. The anaerobic bacteria, the oceans are getting so anoxic right now. The fish are dying massively for lack of oxygen. And what they need is full recovery, full ocean recovery, not sustainable exploitation. Something that's 90% gone cannot be sustainably anything. No fish means no air. It's the fish shit. I mean, this is what I wrote. No oxygen, no justice. Well, that's about it. I would ask Bill to sing another song. Your choice. But Austin is a summer city. And Barton Springs eternal.
20 years ago this week. Austin is a summer city and Barton Springs eternal. Winter's short and the springs are pretty and warm. Springs eternal. And when it's warm, where do we go to remove most all our clothes? The cleanest, clearest swimming hole is Barton Springs eternal. Maybe dry on Barton Creek, but Barton Springs eternal. May not have rained in many weeks, but Barton Springs eternal. If it's warm or if it's freeze, it's always 68 degrees in a world of uncertainties. Barton Springs eternal. Salamanders living there since Barton sprang eternal. They're not too big, there's room to share. Barton Springs eternal. The sign of the times, things are fine. The canary in our gold mine will rue the day if we don't find it in Barton Springs eternal. Let's go paddling up the creek to Barton Springs eternal, to the splash exhibit and take a peek at Barton Springs eternal. Take a swim, take a walk, listen to the water talk. It's story time at Philosopher's Rock, Barton Springs eternal. Why do people worry so about Barton Springs eternal? And holler out, look out below. Barton Springs eternal. It's a little twist on down and up. When your aquifer is an aqueduct, what goes down then comes up. Barton Springs eternal. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to add a little bit to the song right in the middle here. Something a surprise for all of us. We just entered the room. Come on up, Tom. Fill us up a little bit here. It's Tom, the world poet, taking over.
Freedom is speech and freedom of assembly is the heart of every community. When I look around for signs of life, I hardly find any human beings. I find clones and drones and iPhones. I find a Twitter, I find a website. But I'm looking for the human beings. I'm going to go to a bookstore like this one tonight. Now let me tell you, free speech is never free. You put your whole body on for eternity. You invest, as far as I can see, you're the best. Let it be freedom of assembly. That means we can gather without being arrested, like that Occupy person in Pennsylvania who simply said, don't be in the banks, man, because they'll bankrupt the nation. You can't say these things unless you're within consenting individuals like your good selves. We go out to the big wide world and suddenly we got free handcuffs and free tasers and free prison sentences. Everyone extends for life sentences. I'm saying, whatever happened to that Bill of Rights, that Constitution, you remember? Well, I guess you do. What do you got to say, son? Stand there like a radioactive.
He's hot.
I'm Chernobyl. I'm a Fukushima of your imagination. I'm made in Japan. I'm an export son. You see, I came from somewhere else. We're all astral aliens. Now you can have your little machine, but you can't capture my spirit. As far as Bill and I, well, you see, we're a team heading up for infinity. So whatever might be, when I say freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, it's only part of everything you already know because you're here bringing me books.
Times we read and weep, Barton Springs eternal. Watch development as it creeps up, Barton Springs eternal. This piecemeal progress and grand demise, mauled and golfed and condo-wise, we don't want no consolation prize, we want Barton Springs eternal. Barton Springs eternal. Barton Springs eternal. Die off! Oh no! Spread the word! Harlan Massive plankton, die off!
Yeah, thank you very much. I thank y'all for coming too.
That was it?
Yeah, I'm not sure that we could do it for 2 hours. I didn't time it. But thanks for coming.
Man, you go remember those ones.
Bravo!
Any questions?
Bob Schrader!